G'day guys, Jake and Pete here from Powertune Australia, and today we have an M1 Plug and Play kit for an R32, 33 and 34. We're going to show you how to install this entire kit that we have on the bench here, including the software, how to install it, and Pete's going to give us the full rundown. So Peter, here's the kit. What is it exactly and why should we buy this kit?
Alright, so this is our M1 Plug and Play kit for a GDR, the RB26 GDR.
So when you have like plug and play kits or bolt-on kits, it's not always what it's cracked up to be. So you're saying that if you buy this entire kit, you could literally do it with only a few tools yourself and literally turn the key and it would run?
Yeah, definitely.
So anyone at home could buy this kit?
You could do it in your garage.
The whole thing?
For sure, yeah.
Well, let's get into it. All right, Pete, let's go through exactly what the kit comes with because there looks like a lot of stuff here, and we'll start with the most important bit.
Yeah, so laid out in front of us is a full kit basically. Different stages of the builds will require different parts of this kit. So for example, this car in particular is getting the C127 in place of the MFD. So that comes with a plug-in loom for your MFD to C127.
Okay, so this thing here is obviously a cable. So you're saying you can plug this end into the factory plug, and then this goes into the new dash, and it's gonna work?
So there's two options with this. With the C127, there's an option of upgrading it for I/O expansion. So you have the choice of either connecting this straight to the dash or to the ECU. In this instance, we're putting it to the ECU.
Oh, okay. So probably the most important bit is obviously the ECU. Can this work with any M1 ECU, or it has to be a certain one?
So with this kit, it works with an M130 and an M150 ECU.
And then this box here is obviously...
This is the adapter box. So factory header, factory connector goes here. We supply a 1-to-1 loom that connects to the A and B connector of the adapter box, goes to the C and D connector of an M150 or A and B connector of the M130.
Okay.
On the side of the adapter box, we've got an expansion port and then your Ethernet port.
So obviously this is an M150. I know a little bit about these, but what's the difference between an M150 and M130?
So basically, the brains of them are the same. This just has extra I/O, so this can do 12 injectors, whereas an M130 can do 8 injectors. And there's a bunch of extra I/O. This has 3 CANBUSes, whereas an M130 has 1.
So what's a CANBUS, if you don't mind me asking?
So think of a CANBUS like a network. So just the way that, especially in modern cars, each device on the car integrates and speaks to each other on this network with a CAN bus. So with an M130, we've got 1. We're limited to just 1 CAN bus. The M150, we have 3.
So if I owned a GDR and I wanted to go M130 over an M150, why would I want to upscale to an M150? Like, what's the added benefits? Like, what am I limited to with the M130?
With the M130, because it's a 6-cylinder, especially, it's already pretty tapped on inputs and outputs. With the M150, it gives us more option of more sensors, more injectors, more I/O.
Okay, so basically, yeah, more protection, more future-proofing if you wanted to upgrade your car later on down the track. Okay, cool. So obviously you got the wideband sensors, you got 2 of them here. Why should someone buy 2 of them over 1, and what is it that these things actually do anyway?
All right, so these are sensors that measure your air-fuel ratio. That relays the information back to the ECU, and then the ECU can adjust if it's running rich or lean. The benefit of running 2, especially on a twin turbocharged car, is we have 1 sensor for each bank, and instead of having an average at the end of both banks, it just provides a more accurate reading, and then the ECU can adjust from that.
Okay, so you've got basically 1 sensor on the front 3 cylinders, and then you got 1 on the 3 at the back of the engine. Okay, cool. So this unit here is an LTC. Why do we need this?
So we need that to control the 2 wideband sensors that we've got here. Not every car is going to have 2. In this particular case, because it's a twin turbo car, we are using 2 sensors, 1 for each bank, to accurately measure the air-fuel ratio coming out of each bank of the motor.
So that's a MAP sensor. Moving on, there's another sensor here. Inlet air temp, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is obviously why are we changing this?
So this is a fast reacting air temp sensor.
And what's wrong? Is the factory one not fast reacting?
The factory one is just a normal air temp sensor, so it's slow to measure the air temperature coming through the engine. Just basically, it measures the air going into the engine at a faster rate than the OE one does, which means a more accurate reading to the ECU, which means more accurate fueling.
Fair enough. Sold. Okay. Changing these sensors, does that mean you have to change the wiring, or is this?
Yeah, so we provide a plug-in adapter that goes from the factory air temp sensor to the new aftermarket air temp sensor.
Okay, so you don't have to do any wiring, no cutting, shutting, nothing.
Just unplug your air temp sensor, fit that one, plug this in.
Cool. So with this whole plug-in kit, the ATTESA system, does that still work?
So the ATTESA system stays as it would as a factory car. Within the ECU and adapter kit, we've actually incorporated a circuit that manipulates the TPS signal that originally goes to the ATTESA system. So we have a basic level of control on the four-wheel drive with that. And then on the full-scale build, we can also supply a full wiring loom that takes full control of the ATTESA system.
All right, getting to the last few pieces of this puzzle. This big stack of wiring here, what's the story here, Pete?
All right, so this is our expansion harness. It may look different depending on how the order's been structured and depending on the different variables on all the different cars that are out there. For instance, this one's getting a full MFD keypad, but some people might not opt for a keypad or an MFD.
So we make this in-house to suit every single in particular order?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So now getting to the very end of what's on the bench here is all these pieces of metal. What's the story here, mate?
So this is the mounting hardware for the whole kit. This is the ECU mount, so it suits M130 and M150. This is the little mount for our adapter box, a mount for the MAP sensor, and a mount for the LTC.
So this is all bolting onto like factory locations on the car? You don't have to cut or drill any holes?
Yeah, no cutting, no drilling, nothing, just...
So everything stays factory on the car, and we are going to explain exactly how this is put on in this video.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. So with this whole plug-in kit as well, are there any variations?
There is one major variation where the R32 and R33 cam and crank sensor are different to a 34. So within the adapter box, there's micro switches that switches between the 32, 33 and the 34, but we will do that before we send it out.
So basically it's very important that we're told exactly what car we're building this kit for.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's also another option where you can get this amazing C127 to replace the MFD in the car. And the MFD is what exactly?
It's the OE multifunctional display in the middle of an
Dash
R34 GDR. Yeah.
Cool. So this is obviously only in the R34 GDR.
Yep.
So what exactly comes in this kit if you were to purchase this?
So with the kit, you would get the surround, the C127 Dash. You have the plug-in loom that connects to the factory MFD wiring. And then also incorporated in this loom is the wiring that goes from the ECU to the dash.
So we're going to obviously show how to install this. And it's a simple plug and play kit. So obviously the factory MFD has a lot of data and information on it. Is any of that crossed over to this?
Yeah, so with this plug-in loom, we can make use of a lot of OEM sensors that are on the car. So oil pressure, oil temperature, exhaust temperature, our ambient temperature.
And then can others be added to it as well?
Yeah, so any future sensors obviously that go to the ECU or the dash can be displayed on the dash as well.
So with getting this as an extra option, is there any instructions with it?
Yep, so there'll be full documentation of all of the wiring that's going in, as well as how to program the dash. And obviously this video is how to fit the dash. Okay, so the first step, just like every time we're doing anything to do with the electronics on a car, is to disconnect the battery. So with an R34 and an R33, the battery is in the boot behind this trim here. With an R32, the battery is in the engine bay. So we'll need to remove this trim and disconnect the negative terminal of the battery. For tooling, I'm going to be using a Phillips head screwdriver and trim removal tool to remove this trim piece, and then on this particular car I'm going to need Allen keys to remove the battery terminal, but every car could be different. Alright, now that we've removed the rear trim, we can go ahead and disconnect the negative terminal of the battery. Alright, so in this step, I'm going to be installing the engine bay side of the wiring loom, which has our MAP sensor and LTC. Alright, so we're going to have to pass the wiring through the factory wiring harness grommet, which sits behind the ABS module. The wiring is going to pass through. The LTC is going to sit next to the ABS module here, and the MAP sensor will be on the very opposite side of the engine bay. Alright, so getting through the grommet can get a bit tricky. If there's wiring going through the grommet already, then that'll make our life a lot easier. If not, you're going to have to poke a long screwdriver through and then tape the wiring from the inside and then pull it through. Alright, so your factory ECU sits behind this kick panel on the passenger side of the car. We're going to go ahead and remove that, as well as the glove box surround. For that, we're going to just need a Phillips head screwdriver. So underneath the glove box, there are two clips that you need to locate and pull. Alright, you want to open your glove box now. Tilt it to the side. There will be a wire that you need to unclip, and then your glove box can come out. Put that to the side. Okay, to remove your kick panel next, we're going to have to lift the very front edge of this side panel. Just a nice gentle pull. There's a plastic nut holding the trim in. Once you remove that, give the whole kick panel a gentle pull and you'll be able to slide it out. So now we're going to have to remove the glove box surround. There are 6 screws that you need to undo with your Phillips head screwdriver. Once you've pulled the whole thing out, you'll need to disconnect the glove box light which sits on top. It's the little plastic connector that you need to unclip. So I'll do that now. So this is your factory ECU. It's held on by 2 bolts and a nut, as well as the factory ECU connector. So for this, we'll need a 10mm socket. I'll go ahead and undo all this hardware. Okay, so now that we've passed our wiring through to the engine bay, we can put it up next to the blower motor to the side for now, as we'll need to install it there. We'll grab our adapter box with the mount, as well as the 1-to-1 loom, and mount it in its place. It doesn't matter which way the 1-to-1 loom goes. So you undo this 10mm nut up here with a socket. You sit your adapter box up, making sure to plug in all of the wiring before tightening the nut. You're also going to want to connect your Ethernet cable now. So once all of our wiring's plugged in, we can feed it to the side of the blower motor to connect to the ECU. tighten your adapter. We can now go ahead and fit our brand new M1 ECU. You're going to need to remove the bolt that holds our ECCS relay in place, as the mount for the ECU uses this hole. So with the 10mm, I can just go ahead and unscrew this, and I can sit my ECU in place. Okay, now that our M1 ECU is secured, we can go ahead and plug in the connectors from the adapter box. And our OE wiring loom can come up over the top of the M1 ECU and connect to our adapter box. So the little bit of wiring that you will need to do is to fit the two connectors for your MAP sensor and your LTC. So once we've fed the wiring through the engine bay, be able to pull it up here and then pin it in as per instructions in the diagram. So I'll do that now. Now that we've fitted our two connectors, we can pass the wiring through. So your MAP sensor is going to go along the firewall, following the OEM loom, across behind the brake booster, and over to next to where the OEM pressure sensor, boost pressure sensor is. And then your LTC connector will go behind the ABS module and sit here for us to connect our LTC. Okay, now I'm going to show you how we'll mount the LTC or wideband controller to its bracket and then into the car. So the bracket supplied is to suit both our Powertune wideband controller and also Motex LTC. So I'll fit it with the supplied hardware, making sure it's sitting straight and tightening it up. So now I'm going to show you how we're going to mount our MAP sensor kit. So we'll grab our MAP sensor, put it through the main hole of the bracket. We'll put our MPT to MPT coupler with a little bit of thread sealant. And then I'm going to use a 19mm spanner and a shifter to tighten this up. And then from here, we're going to fit our NPT to barb fitting on the end of our coupler. And use our shifter and then a 13mm spanner to tighten that up. Okay. So we're going to have to remove our OEM O2 sensors which sit on the dump pipe behind the turbos and fit our two Bosch wideband sensors. Right, now locate this little box, which is your wiper amplifier, and undo the 10mm bolt holding it in. And using the same bolt, we're going to bolt in our bracket holding our wideband controller, making sure that we can plug in the connections after. Okay, now that we've fitted our wideband controller, it should look something like this. We can go ahead and plug in our 4-pin DTM connector and our 2 Bosch wideband connectors. When you're connecting your wideband sensors, you want to make sure that you're connecting each sensor to its correct bank. Now you can tuck and tie away your wiring and then move on to our MAP sensor. So to mount our MAP sensor, we're going to be using the factory boost pressure sensors mounting as well as the vacuum hose going to the sensor. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this 10mm bolt as well as the vacuum hose and the connector connected to the boost pressure sensor. Okay, so we're going to want to undo this 10mm bolt that holds the boost pressure sensor onto its mount and fit our MAP sensor onto the top of that. You'll also be supplied with a T-piece and some vacuum hose to connect the OEM boost pressure sensors vacuum hose to both our MAP sensor and the boost pressure sensor. Now with this complete, we can go ahead and install it back into the car. It may be easier to lift and move the throttle cable out of the way to give you a bit more room. Okay, now that we've screwed in our mount, we can fit our vacuum line, tuck and tie it out of the way, clip in our throttle cable, and plug in the connector for the MAP sensor, and tuck and tie away the wiring. So now I'm going to replace the inlet air temp sensor. For this, we'll need our inlet air temp sensor, the adapter, a 19mm spanner, and some thread sealant. So disconnect the factory sensor and unscrew it. So once we've removed our inlet air temp sensor, remove the washer, fit it onto the new sensor, put a bit of thread sealant, and refit it into its place. So once you've unboxed your C127 Dash, slide it into the surround and affix it with the supplied hardware. For this, you'll need an 8mm spanner. With the keypad, sit it into its mount and fix it with the supplied hardware. For this, you'll need a 10mm with an extension and a ratchet. We'll also have to install our wiring. So you'll be supplied with a loom that plugs directly into your CANBUS from the ECU, and that will plug into both your dash and your keypad. You'll also be supplied with an MFD loom, which plugs into the factory MFD connector and supplies us with all the data that we need. Now I'll go ahead and install it into the car. So now I'll be showing you how to remove your factory MFD. For this, we will need a plastic trim removal tool, a Phillips head screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver or a pick, and a ratchet with an 8mm. We'll first need to remove this center vent with the hazard switch. For this, you'll need your trim removal tool. So put your plastic trim removal tool in between the MFD surround and the vent, being careful not to scratch it, and pop it out. From here, you'll need to disconnect your hazard light switch with your pick or screwdriver. And then put that to the side. There are two Phillips head screws holding the MFD surround, which we'll need to undo. The surround can now be removed and then put to the side. Holding the actual screen in are 4 8mm screws that you'll need to undo and 2 connectors that we'll need to disconnect. Now that we've removed our factory MFD, we can go ahead and pass the wiring from the ECU up to the dash. So this loom will come terminated. You may find it easier to disconnect it. To do that, you just lift this white tab from the bottom side of the connector and then pull the wires out. So pass the wiring from behind the glove box and then up to where the C127 is going to be. From here, pin it into the connector as per the wiring diagram. Once you've inserted every pin, push the white tab back down and that's locked in place. We're now ready to plug in our MFD adapter. So on the factory MFD wiring, we are only using the brown connector. So simply plug it in and then plug in the 12-pin DTM connector to the loom supplied that goes to either your dash or your ECU depending on your kit. From here, tuck the wiring away from the vent so it doesn't interfere with the vent and have the C127 connector ready to be plugged in. Plug in your C127. Keep in mind that the C127 connector actually plugs in upside down. Sit it in place, slide it forward, and reattach your 2 Phillips head screws. We can now reconnect our hazard switch and refit our vent. So to run our wiring to our keypad, it would be easiest to remove this whole Gearshift surround. So to do this, remove your ashtray by opening it and pulling it out. This will reveal a Phillips head screw. So unscrew that. Depending on your gear knob, you may have to unscrew it and remove it. Unclip the Gearshift surround and pull it up and out. You'll need to then disconnect your cigarette lighter. Put it to the side. From here, run your keypad wiring up. Grab your Gearshift surround, sit it through where your ashtray would be, and then refit it. Now connect your keypad. And push it in place. Now that we've installed our C127 Dash and keypad, I'll now connect our CAN wiring, which will go to the expansion loom that is supplied with the kit, and tie it away. I'll make sure to run the Ethernet comms from the Dash into the glove box so that we can plug into it. Okay, now we can reinstall our glove box and kick panel. So this is just the reverse of how we took it out. Make sure that you feed your Ethernet cables through the top of the glove box so that it's easy to connect to your ECU and Dash. So now that we've installed our kit, we can go ahead and reconnect the battery and then load our bass tune to the ECU. So the first thing you'll need to do is to connect your laptop to the ECU via the Ethernet port. You'll then need to load the bass file that we would email to you. So once you've opened the email with your bass tune, save that onto your computer, open up M1 Tune, go to Open Package, Import File, and import your tune. Open up the tune. You will need to set the target serial. So go to File, Edit Target Serial. This will automatically discover the ECU that it's connected to. Hit OK. Name your vehicle, so in this case, this is Richard's R34. OK. And from here, we can click Send to ECU. So once we've sent our bass tune, you'll hear the fuel pumps prime, which means that the ECU has successfully accepted the tune. This bass tune is set up to run a standard car on standard injectors with a HV 4-bar MAP sensor. So if you have a different MAP sensor, you will need to recalibrate the MAP sensor to suit. From there, you will then need to calibrate your throttle position. So under All Calibrate, search for Throttle Position. Scroll down to where you see Offset with your foot off the throttle. Press Q on your keyboard. Sorry. Press Q on your keyboard. Go down to Scale. Put your foot on the throttle to 100% and hit Q again. And save that. So Control S, save. Okay. You'll then need to change your injector scaling if you are not running standard injectors. For example, I'll put in 1000cc injectors. If your engine is no longer a 2.6 litre, you go to Engine Details, Engine Displacement, and change it there. So now that we've successfully configured everything that we need to on the base tune, we can go ahead and start the car. So from here, you'll need to take it to your dyno tuner, and they will need to set the base timing before they start tuning. I'll now be showing you how to set up the communications between your keypad, your ECU and your dash. So I'll start off with our CAN setup within the ECU. So under All Calibrate, I'll search for CAN. I'll make sure that the CANBUS that I'm using is set. And I'll make sure that my ECU receive and transmit settings are as they are shown on the screen. I'll then search for keypad. I'll enable it to the CAN bus that it's wired to. I'll set up these settings and I'll save that. You will then see your keypad light up. And from here you can set the buttons to control whatever you like, from boost control to traction control to your dash pages. I'll now set up a file for the C127 to communicate with my M1 ECU. So I'll disconnect the Ethernet from our ECU and connect to the dash. So I'll now be setting up a file for the C127. So if you haven't already, download C127 Dash Manager from Motec. Click File, New, select M1. I'll then be able to send this blank M1 file to the dash. So the dash is also a logging device. So if you go to Functions and Logging, you can set up all of your logging parameters. And to download a log, you go to Online, Get Log Data, and view that log data in Motec i2. So that wraps up our GTR M1 Plugin Kit install. With the loaded base tune, you can now take it to your tuner and have the car finalized.